Welcome to the Pixel Retentive podcast, where we, a business owner and an artist, discuss the business of art and the art of business. Hey friends, I'm Carl, founder of Epic Made, and I'm the host of the Pixel Retentive podcast, where we share our thoughts on creativity, art, and business. Past guests include Mac Garrison of Dash Studios, Laura Nespoli of Mesh and Movement, and Sam Simmons of Mint Pass. I am forever grateful for the supporters of our podcast, and we are always looking for more sponsors. That said, Pixel Retentive is brought to you by the creative gurus at Epic Made. Epic Made is a team of strategists and artists who excel in visual storytelling. Our studio crafts unforgettable animation and illustrations that are designed to captivate your audience and drive tangible business results. We specialize in engaging imaginative pop culture savvy audiences with beloved clients like Nickelodeon, WWE, and Sci-Fi. Visit getepicmade.com and let's collaborate on your next creative campaign. All right, so with us today we have Derek Smith. Welcome to the show, Derek.
A pleasure. So pleased to be here, Carl.
Super excited to have you. All right, so Derek is an international master of ceremonies known for his contagious energy and ability to engage audiences with professionalism, humor, and rapid-fire delivery. His event speaking services are inspiring the next generation of events by creating better public speakers. Before we jump into today's topic, I'd love for our audience to get to know you a little bit. And so how long have you been in your industry, and what are you most proud of so far?
Oh, very nice. Well, over 15 years, despite my youthful good looks. I threw in the word good there, Carl. Over 15 years, I have been an MC and helping people with their public speaking, specifically event speakers who are looking to do live events, virtual events, and the like. So that much time, what I'm most proud of, probably, I'm just going to go with the easy one. I won a gold medal at the Olympics in 2010, but not for my sports acumen. No. I was sent there by a large international company, and they put a bunch of people in a competition. And when the competition was all said and done, I walked away with the gold medal. I'd be glad to talk about that a little bit more if you want, but that's probably one of the things I'm most proud of.
Definitely talk about that more. What? So this was not an Olympic event. It was a sub-event, the Olympics, with a group of people. Correct. Okay.
You got this, Carl. You got it. And again, I'd like to say I put in more sweat, blood, and tears than a standard athlete. No. So it was the organization, of course, Samsung. They invited representatives from every major country in the world. So you can imagine all those usual countries you would find at the Olympics. They sent us to Vancouver, which again is 2010, for the Winter Olympics. But because of a wide variety of media restrictions, what they did was they had us go backstage to meet the athletes, rub shoulders with certain people, do interviews, meet people, and every single day during the Olympics, we would release content online, and people around the world would vote on their favorite content. So just to loop that around, by the end of the 3 weeks, it looked as though myself and my creative business partner, we won because people had voted our content to the top.
That's amazing. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, appreciate you sharing that. That's super fun.
Hey, yeah, well, I think I'm pretty proud of it. Pretty proud.
It's pretty cool. So today I wanted to focus our conversation around, why people should do public speaking, especially creatives or business owners and that sort of thing. I know public speaking, last I checked, was still everyone's number one professional fear, in the world. Like that one has constantly been number one. So yeah, let's kick it off from the top there, and just, I'd love to hear some of your thoughts. So.
Yeah, and so it's one of these things where you're absolutely right. Public speaking, as people call it, people cringe when you say those words. So I'm often kicking around different terms just to get people to understand what it is I do. But these days, business owners, entrepreneurs, they're finding themselves recognizing the value of the stage effect. So whether it's attending a conference, being on podcast, a wide variety of media-esque things, you need to know your message, you need to know who you are, and you need to know how to engage people with your message. So that's how I help people. And that is kind of summed up by calling it public speaking. But more than anything, it's speaking as a whole. It's speaking in a large different sets of things. It's all under that umbrella of just getting your message out eloquently and effectively.
Yeah, I love that. I've seen the value of that myself. I started my business in 2007. as a college student that didn't have a clue, but just knew that I didn't want a job working for the man, whatever that was, and that wasn't going to make me happy. And as I built my business up over the past basically 2 decades at this point, wow, damn, that snuck up quick. I used to be, young and spry.
Same here, my friends. Same here.
When I started, I had a full head of hair. I had no gray in my beard. But no, I saw some amazing things happen. I'd say in the past 3 or 4 years when I decided I'm going to start doing some public speaking. I'm going to go to some events. I'm going to become, known as a specialist in certain fields, chiefly around creative and blockchain stuff. I'm deep in the weeds on NFTs and all that. And then doing this podcast, like it really does start to layer in things where people trust you more and more because you're willing to go out in public and say the things you believe. Like
that's it. Yeah, and it's a great networking hack too, because again, I use this term stage effect. You're standing on the stage, you spread your business card out to everybody in attendance, and boom, they know exactly who you are rather than having to feel the need to shake hands with everyone in that room. One of those things that a lot of people feel, and I think this is why it makes a lot of people nervous when it comes to their public speaking, is that they feel the need to attract everybody in that room. I hope everybody likes me. I hope everybody is like into what I'm saying. It's like, I always encourage them, no, don't do that. Just know your audience, the audience you're looking to engage with. Be comfortable repelling the people that you don't want to engage with, and just let the people who are attracted to your message come and then chat with you afterwards. So it's, again, like I said, it's a networking hack.
Yeah, and it's the basics of the same thing in marketing, right? Like you shouldn't try to be everything for everybody because then you're nobody, right? Like you're unremarkable. No one's favorite flavor is vanilla ice cream, right? Like everyone sort of likes vanilla. Like, yeah, I'm not gonna turn it down. Maybe some not gonna.
Oh, I know,
right? But like, it's like you might be a mint chocolate chip person or a chocolate chip cookie dough or a rocky road, and that's great. Some people are gonna hate that, and some people are gonna be infectiously in love with that, right? And like. So that's how you want to put yourself out there, at least in my space that I've seen. So,
yeah, making me hungry.
Sorry. It is that time over here. You're a little. Where are you at again? You're out in the middle of the.
Well, I am located currently in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. I am on Madeira Island in Portugal. Been here for about 3.5 years, so this is where I call home these days. But I've been traveling for almost 15 years, ever since I started being a master of ceremonies and a public speaking coach. It's been on the road, and this is where I found as probably the most comfortable environment for me to do everything, because it's springtime all the time on this island. So as a Canadian, I'm over the snow. I'm just over it, Carl. And now here on the island, I never have to think about snow.
Yeah, that's amazing. I've never seen Canadian level snow being here in Virginia. But that said, like it's 16 degrees outside. It's not well, it's
pretty similar. It's pretty similar, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, man. So look, I love this idea of like really influencing people. Like so to get on that stage and to feel confident and to deliver your message and get the most out of that stage effect, you've got to be comfortable in your persona, right? And I think, some of the things we sort of talked about earlier is that people can develop a stage persona that can help them sort of get away from some of their I guess inhibitions or inability to feel confident on stage. So I'd love for you to talk through some of that.
Well, yeah, no doubt. I think of people when they kind of are forced to, face their speaking needs or what they need to kind of get their message out. They need to know just that word right there. They need to know their message. They need to know how to engage people with that message. So those are important pieces of the puzzle. But the thing to overcome yourself is kind of identifying who you are when you step up. I'll use the word stage. As you step up there, like, who are you? And a lot of people, they kind of feel as though, oh, well, I'm a PhD student. I'm a father of two. I'm a this, that, or the other thing. And that might be truthfully what you are in your day-to-day. But today, as you are here live in front of us, what is your persona? Who are you? Maybe all you need to be is the advocate for the thing that you're speaking about that day. So you can shape and color a particular persona for the day, which then can, in some way, help you forget about the things that your ego may trip you up on, and just be like, hey, I'm showing up as this persona. And then it does help people kind of ease into getting that message and that engagement a little bit more, fluid flowy. I think flowy is the word I'm thinking with the audience, because you can just be who it is you set out to be. And the persona work tends to be the most fun stuff that my clients work with, is because they can kind of reinvent themselves, and they can reinvent themselves time and time again.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Mm.
So tell me about a time where you've seen someone go from like timid, they don't know what to talk about, to really like owning it, And
Yeah,
how that works out for them. So,
yeah, I had a client a couple of years ago. He was like an older gentleman, and for him, he always used to say to me that he was more substance than style. So we spent some time injecting style into him, and when it all boiled down to it, it really just came down to enthusiasm. The man was very stoic and very just, matter of factly, and that's how his information was coming out when I first met him. And then as we started to do more work, I just said, hey, why don't you kind of just break off some of that rust and like, hey, how are you? Great to see everybody, whatever. And within no time, he completely changed it. Again, he was a retired consultant who didn't speak that often. And now to this day, and that was 5 years ago, he is still going around the world, performing his signature talk to a lot of people. And he comes out, and when you see him, he's very colorful and he's very exuberant. And again, very enthusiastic about what he's doing. And he just didn't have that inside of him before. So he still has that substance, and now he has that style. So it's really interesting to see his growth over these past few years.
that's awesome, man. Love to hear that. So like, so we have another piece here. The value of one's persona, right? Like that's really the whole thing, right? Like if you have no persona and you don't have that enthusiasm or excitement or that angle or that position that you're in, like it's hard to resonate and connect, right? So
And and the interesting part is, like, it doesn't take a lot. Like, it can be 15 minutes or less of you just sitting down and reassessing or just revisiting some very basic questions. Question number one, and maybe I'll put this on your plate right now, Carl. Is like, Carl, what's your name?
Carl.
Oh,
Although they said colorful Carl actually a lot now.
you do, exactly. And so that's great. If you were to step onto like a conference stage, you got 1,000 people in front of you, you might not come up and just go, hi, everybody, I'm Carl. Maybe you would. Most likely you wouldn't. You might want to come up and say, when I say my name, I say colorful Carl. And let me ask you this question, Carl. What is your title?
I am an artist and CEO of Epic Made. So that's
Yeah, sorry. And I know I'm putting you on the spot there.
it's good. It's great. No, I usually say like, so I'm an artist and I'm CEO, a podcast host, and I have like a rattling list of things that I just go blah blah blah. So
Perfect. And that's it. And so you do know this, and I won't comb over it too deep, but it's like that idea you have it, but just taking a few minutes with a pen and a paper and reminding yourself, okay, so I am Colorful Carl, I am these things, and then also what brand do you represent? It sounds like, Epic Made's in there. You got a few others that you might want to pop in there, but then it's also identifying perhaps what mission you're on. And I'm not suggesting that you're always going to be blurting these specific messages out, but psychologically it's good to remind yourself what your mission is. So maybe, and I am on a mission to help 10,000 entrepreneurs better understand how to make their lives more colorful, or whatever the heck it is, so you're able to just have that mission planted in your head, and it may come up in conversation or during the bit, so that way you can just have that in your back pocket. And this is what I mean when I speak about this persona work, just being able to sit down for a little bit to remember who I am, who I represent, and again, how I present myself. How do I actually say it? And then again, it doesn't need to be 5-hour effort. It's just a 15-minute, have it on a piece of paper, and then get it up here in your brain before you step up on stage.
I love it. So I always like to ask some of these little random weird questions. Well, tell me about a time when you were still trying to sort this out, when you really bombed it, like where you felt so uncomfortable, and like that was those are the growth moments, right? Like,
yeah. How much time do you have? Actually, the truth is, Carl, and I definitely have some stories for you. But I actually tell people that like I've made hundreds, if not thousands, of mistakes in my career, and I almost would like to say that I am in the business of making mistakes, because a lot of the public speaking clients that I have, we perform practice events. And at these practice events, I'm always saying, guys, don't sweat it. It's a safe space for you to make mistakes. So let's go. Make mistakes. So I've made my share of mistakes. Number one that comes to mind on my list was I was always taught never to chew gum before you come up on in a talk. And I ignored it immediately. I was like, it's fine. I can handle the gum. Totally tripped me up in the first 5 seconds. Number two, I remember a mistake when someone said like, don't ever memorize your talk or your speech word for word. It'll never play out that way. And I said, I can do that. Sure enough, went up, intended to do my monologue, totally dropped the ball at the 5-second mark. Completely, my mind went blank. And that's that kind of stuff where those kind of mistakes make you remember that, like, more than anything, it's not me speaking. Even right now, yes, it's me speaking, but it's shining through me in some regard where, like, just get out of your own way and remember what you're speaking about rather than feel the need to always be hitting your marks with every single line that you have in a script. Want to remind you, public speaking is not a monologue. It's not a play. It is you just trying to convey information to people. So for me, the second mistake was that I tried to memorize my whole thing and I totally failed. And the final and the third one I'm going to hit you with is that listening is super important when it comes to speaking. For me, as you know, I'm an MC, so I host events all the time. And I'd like to think I'm pretty professional about what I do. I'm paying attention. I got my finger on the pulse. And just about 5 years ago, I was still making mistakes. And there was an event where what we did is we invited the audience up on stage to tell some stories. And there was a particular theme to the stories. And it was a whole fun evening. Everyone was having a good time. And so every time I'd invite people up, like, give it up for James. And James would come up. And then give it up for Janice. And she'd come up. And I'd step off stage. And this one time I invited this next person up. I said, give it up for Frank. He came up. And then I stepped off stage. And this person came up and started speaking in my ear. And I wasn't paying attention to what Frank was talking about at all. And unbeknownst to me, he was telling a terrible story. Like, I'm talking a very offensive story that had the whole audience's energy dropping significantly. Meanwhile, I'm chatting with my friend, oh yeah, having a good time, only then to come back up on stage. He goes, guys, give it up for Frank. And everyone's just looking at me like, you disgusting person. They looked at me as though I had made some significant mistake. I endorsed Frank. I'm like, I love what this guy had to say. What an amazing talk that was. It's like, so lesson learned. Make sure you're always paying attention and listening to what's happening around you. Otherwise, you might pull a Derek or pull a Frank.
Yeah. It's easier to do than you might think, right? Oh, how does I love it. I think the first time I tried to do any public speaking, it must have been like 2009 or 10, early on in the business. And like I had set up this whole presentation for a bunch of UPS store owners to like hire our company to be, your outsourced creative department, right? And like 4 people showed up, and I had this whole script, and like I stood up at this table, and I'm like, I'm not very comfortable in public speaking, but like, and the whole thing was such a bomb. And it's like, there's 3 people here. This isn't even public speaking. Like, we're in a small room. But I just like went with it because I had planned this thing out, and it was supposed to be a little different. But I just remember afterwards, like, that was the most, like, I was just sort of embarrassed. It's like,
well, yeah.
Yeah.
You use this word mistake earlier, like, and that's it. Like, in this case, it sounds like you showed your cards right away. Like, I'm not really good at this, guys. Like,
yeah.
When we hear someone say that, it goes, okay, well then thanks for lowering my expectations. I'm not paying attention to what you ever have to say. Or better, or worse yet, you hear a lot of people come up when they're doing their speaking, and they'll apologize when they make a mistake. They'll slip up and they'll go, oh, I'm so sorry. And it's just like, don't apologize. Like, no one is paying that close of attention to your little blunders. If anything, just be determined to get through it. And most likely, no one's going to remember it, because before too long, they're going to be out to lunch thinking about their lives and not thinking about how you performed on stage. So when in doubt, don't ever apologize or play your cards too early, because again, it just does not serve you in any way.
That makes a lot of sense. I like that. So one thing I've thought about too, so I've been tapped to do a bunch of public speaking. I'm not on the level that you're at, but like, I'm comfortable with it. I always come up with a little presentation. I try not to do, like, I definitely don't get real scripty. It's very outliney, just like, hey, these are the high points and yada, yada. So I've got some of that stuff down, but I think doing the dance on being compensated for public speaking is always an interesting perspective. I'd love to hear like your thoughts on how do you negotiate pricing? Like, how do you encourage other people to do it? So like, obviously you have a whole business built around it. Like, I don't think people are reaching out to you expecting you to come somewhere to speak for free, but like, I would imagine that happens to your clients all the time. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I love that question. It's really good, and you hit the nail on the head for a lot of people. And I'm hopeful a lot of people have stuck around for this conversation to hear this bit specifically. So let's be very clear. there are two types of speakers out there. There are hobbyist speakers and there are professional speakers. Professional speakers get anywhere between $3,000 and $5,000 to perform whatever they intend to do at a conference or wherever they're at. Professional speaking is how you would want to identify yourself if you really do want to get seen as a paid speaker. I'm not implying you can't identify another way and still get paid, but that's really that cue that gets event bookers to know, this person does this for a living. If you just identify as a speaker or something else, people can sometimes just make the assumption like, well, they just want to have the exposure. And again, nothing is more frustrating to a professional speaker than when someone comes up to them and goes, hey, I can get you a lot of exposure. It's like, my rent costs 10,000 exposures. Like, no, you know what I mean? Like, that's not how it works. So what I'm just suggesting is that if you are serious about becoming a speaker and getting your message out there, especially at conferences and festivals and stuff like that, it really would be to identify yourself as a professional speaker. And then again, it will trigger something in those event bookers to know, this person has a price to what they're doing. And so when it comes to negotiating, this becomes an element of where you're at in your career and what you're doing. And then you're going to field that one out. A lot of people are targeting to be in the top 3 of any good event. So you got a big conference, maybe it's a 3-day conference, maybe there's, 50 different speakers. Ideally, the target you're heading towards is to one day be in the top 3 of the marketing and all the messaging that's going out before that event, because more often than not, regardless of your performance at that conference, if you're in the top 3, no matter what, people are still going to come up to you afterwards and go, hey, great job. We'd love to book you for our conference or whatever. So you're really trying to work your way up to get to the top 3. And then by the time you're in the top 3, I'm sure you've heard of this before. There are some authors out there that are getting $100,000 for an event, but more often than not, at least the clientele that I'm working with, we're working within 3 to 5K as a professional speaker.
Okay. Okay.
Did that answer your question, Carl, by the way? Yeah.
Yeah, totally did. So really the positioning, right? Like any part of business, how do you make sure that like you're positioning yourself in a way that is showing value and like, you're not giving away free stuff. I love that a differentiation between hobbyist and professional speaker. And maybe think, exposure, as we speak, a lot of our audience is creatives, and I'm an artist myself. And there's so much of that, like, we'll get you exposure, right? And it's just like, you can double down on your exposure points. Like, yeah. So,
actually, I'll just take that and like, it really does depend on what your needs are. I mean, maybe exposure is exactly what you're looking for. So if that's the case, assess it per situation. Maybe there is a big event coming up and just being on stage. And again, we talked about this stage effect earlier. There's still great value to that. But I think maybe to the question you were saying earlier, which is like to negotiate that stuff, it is understanding the difference between what you are versus what maybe some of these hobbyist speakers are out there. If you are looking to make this your career, then, there's good money to be had. But one thing I will warn everybody, and I would imagine, Carl, as you continue to perform more speaking yourself, you can imagine it takes a lot of energy to step up on a stage in front of a group of people. So don't think if you're setting out your targets for the year, going like, I'm going to go to 20 different events this year and speak. It's like, you're going to be exhausted. So just remember, like, even for me as an MC, I can probably handle between 7 and 8 like events a year where, like I can recuperate after the event is done. So just be realistic about what you can achieve in terms of being a professional speaker.
Yeah, absolutely. The planning that goes into it. And, that's why I try to give like the same speech a couple times. Cause like you do the bulk of the work the first time. Right. And I usually wait for those paid ones to come up with a new speech. Like, hey, I could do this. Right. And then, then give it a few more times. And again, the exposure thing, I'm glad you circled back on that. I don't want people to think that there's not definitely times and places where you want to speak for free. I mean, there's been I speak at different blockchain conventions on like basics of NFTs for like non-Web3 people. I'm like, how this could all work and yada, yada. And that has led to like 6-figure contracts, right? So like this,
exactly.
So
yeah, and it's interesting because we have touched both sides of this in this conversation today. Carl, was like, again, we mentioned the stage effect thing. The stage effect thing doesn't imply that you need to be paid to get that effect. No, that effect is there. So you know what I mean. But I think again, too much to the question you had asked is just more about the negotiation and stuff, and just understanding that where you want to be, and again, perhaps yourself, you have no desire to get paid to speak. I'm not going to put words in your mouth here, Carl, but you know what I mean? Or maybe you would. It didn't matter, but I bet you get great value out of just being in front of those people. And then again, spreading that business card to a group, like a group of people that are interested in what you have to offer. So again, great value and exposure. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I rarely turn down money when it's being offered unless there's an ethical concern there for me. But yes,
That's right. Yes.
it's like, hey, we'd like to pay you for this. No, I'm just feeling generous to this.
You know what? You keep it. You keep the money. No problem.
Well, now that I think about that, I've done that on like smaller things and like trade organizations and nonprofit stuff. Like so it depends, right? Like if I'm giving this speech to some kids at like a high school, like I don't need to get paid to do that. Like but
You could bully them for their lunch money or something on your way out. I mean, that's always an option. Don't underestimate it. Yeah.
good times. So what are some other things in the public speaking space that you think would really benefit people, especially if they're entrepreneurs, agency owners, marketers, that kind of stuff? Any little bits for them that they could take away?
Yeah, I mean, let's be clear. If you are a one-person operation, then you are the spokesperson. That's for sure. But of course, if you have a small team or something, it would benefit you to look around your little boardroom and go, by the way, Tony, you're our spokesperson. And then that means, Tony, we want to get you out onto podcast or get you to the events, get you out there speaking on our behalf. If that is the case, and I'm going to use Tony as the example, but Tony's out there doing his thing. It's really good for him to start identifying on his LinkedIn or wherever his primary channel is to say that he speaks and he's available for speaking opportunities. Never hurts to create a little commercial that would appear in a little video that you could pin to the top of your profile that says something to the effect like, hi, my name's Tony. I represent blah, 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 blah. And I speak about these topics, this, and this, and I'm available for your event. Don't hesitate to reach out, etc., etc. A little commercial is essentially what I'm saying. And that kind of idea really gets attention from the bookers or even just anyone looking to find guests for podcasts or anything. Like, it's just being able to let them know I am available to speak about this topic or these topics. And it really does work well.
Awesome. Yeah. So if someone wants to be more proactive in this, so they create a little commercial, they position themselves as a professional speaker versus just like a public speaker or so, an advocate or whatever. What's the next step? Like, how do they find avenues for themselves to go be the expert and talk at,
Yeah.
Are there agents or like what kind of stuff? Like, yeah.
Yeah, no, I can definitely help you with that. It's also something to consider that nothing is more powerful than having, and I'm going to use the word asset under your belt, which is like maybe you wrote a book, maybe you have a podcast, maybe you've written a white paper, maybe you have, I can go on and on about things that you are essentially using as a vehicle to then show up on these stages. So just don't underestimate the power of being able to have something to take with you and be able to, I'm not going to say promote, but be able to offer people. And that's why I'm here on stage. I'm the authority on this because I'm the one that wrote this thing or I created this piece. Yeah. So really important to have that asset under your belt. And then from that point forward, anyone who's looking to become a professional speaker, number one, make sure you have support in your back pocket because having an assistant or somebody who can send out some messages or make those applications happen. Remember, often what we're doing is just applying to a conference. If we're doing conference speaking, apply for it and just make sure you copy and save that application form because you may end up using a version of it for other applications to other conferences as we go on. And at that point, you could pass it on to somebody in your network to pass it for you. That is one way to do it. Otherwise, yeah, you can definitely engage with some of the bureaus out there or some of the agents that can help to do some of the legwork for you. But more than anything, you don't have to go down that path at all, Carl. You can just quite literally lean into that thing I mentioned earlier, which is becoming one of those top threes, one of those ones that people do want to hear more from. So just start getting yourself on more stages. And from that point forward, the snowball should start rolling. And then people will start knowing you as, oh, hey, by the way, I saw that person speak once. You really want them at your thing. That takes, just assume that it takes a year or so before you're really rolling as a professional speaker. So just sort of set your goal for 2026 is like, by 2026, I'm going to be on these stages, and that's definitely feasible. You just want to get a little practice in there on stages beforehand.
I like it. Yeah. What I started doing was just reaching out to different events and going, hey, I have this talk I wrote on XYZ. And then, give them your accolades, like you said, right? So I was just like, hey, I own this agency. I do this podcast. I've done these NFT collections, whatever, especially relevant to the specific subject matter that just validates that you're worthy to be on the stage sharing information because you might know more than the general population.
100%. And more on, and you, even if it is something common, maybe even your topic is very common, but you still have your flavor that's going to paint that picture for them, that they're just happy to have you reminding people of stuff they may already know, but also you're just going to present it in a different way. And actually, can I put you on the spot here, Carl?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're now heading into a good new year ahead. I'm curious, if you were presented with an opportunity to go on a stage, do you know what your next topic might be about as we head into this new year?
Okay, so like I have my 101 on NFTs and Web3. I've been given that for about 2 years now. I've done that probably 7 times. That one's great, but I do like the idea of like this balancing creativity and happiness and building out a speech on that and talking about all the ways that I've built my entire lifestyle around having what I need to be happy and to continue to grow and expand, but there's no like excessive bullshit. I don't waste money on a bunch of name brand stuff. And like, I've been able to build this very stable life that has endured a recession, COVID, all sorts of different crazy shit. And I haven't had to change my lifestyle. I just keep doing me. So I think there's a speech in there that I can put together to help people talk about it. A lot about self-reliance, and how that kind of spins all up into this freedom that allows me to do whatever I want. And anybody can have that. You don't need to have an agency, but you do need to have a different mindset than like spend 9 to 5 at somebody else's, back and call.
I love it. And by the way, Carl, you nailed the response to my question of like, what would you speak about? So let me just give you a little suggestion as to how you might want to break that down, because we call it a speech. Fine, it could be anything. We don't know how long that speech is going to be, but let's say it was 25 minutes. The way in which I would encourage you to break this down is just kind of come up with little modules, 5-minute modules, and that's a guideline. It can be 3 minutes, it can be 6 minutes, whatever you want. 5 minutes is a good guideline, but just break it down into little bits. So maybe you want to do your origin story, which is like the story of Carl, what got you to this point. Then you said something, I think you might have said self-reliance. So maybe there's a module about that. But then there's also your principles for living a happy life. Maybe you got 5 principles. That's another module. So you can just break this stuff into modules. And then at the last minute, they say, by the way, Carl, we're really sorry, but we've gone over time. You only have 15 minutes to run your talk that we set out to do. You can just go, that's fine. I'm just going to grab 3 of my modules and run with those instead. So being able to modularize how you're going to do your talk is a fun way for you to just be able to use it in different places, because sometimes you might have half hour, sometimes you might only have 5 minutes. So what are you going to show up with?
That's fantastic advice. And then I can just have a slide or 2 per module. And then it's super easy. And I'm not trying to remember scripts in detail because I can talk about this stuff, and that's something my wife helped me with because I was getting a little anxious about the first time I was going to do one of these speeches. She's like, you never shut up about this shit. Like, trust me, you'll be able to talk about it endlessly. Just give yourself some guidelines and just cut loose inside of those boxes and move through the thing. Right. So that's definitely how I got past some of these stage fright ideas of like just sounding like a moron or trying to remember too much and putting too much pressure on myself. And it's like,
yeah. And without leaning into it too hard here for you, Carl. And this should go out to anybody, like, when in doubt, just speak the truth. If you just speak the truth, then it'll shine through pretty naturally. You won't stumble over your words. Sometimes people will come in, they feel the need to exaggerate or like really embellish some part of their aspect or their history. It's like we can sense or sniff out a fake when they're kind of doing that. So authenticity comes from being able to just tell the truth. So when in doubt, just like, feel free to, you could probably just get thrown on a stage, and as long as you're just speaking the truth, we're going to feel like you're being pretty authentic and we're going to be attracted to that.
Yeah. And I love that. That's sort of what happens on panels, right? Like I love getting in panels, kind of have the same thing. They're way less preparation. Even moderating them for me has been like much easier than actually doing a keynote. Right. And I think that's by design, right? But it's panels are also very powerful, and that's probably a great first step for some people. Like, hey, look, if you're not comfortable being the only person on the stage, like commanding the whole crowd, like get on a panel of something you really know a lot about, you're passionate about, and it's a lot easier to do that, and that'll get you comfortable just being up there and talking from the hip. And I think that was helpful for me because the first year I did a panel, and then I this one person in Boston Blockchain, and then I came back the next year and did a keynote and ran a panel, and it was just like way easier that way. So
For sure, for sure. And then, it's this thing where, especially if that's a great strategy, by the way, just maybe start with panels, see yourself sitting amongst that panel. But the one thing you really want to do, and I say see yourself, is rewatch the footage if it exists, because you really want to see yourself sitting amongst them and go, I wasn't the most enthusiastic or most eloquent person on that stage. So that way, when you go back next year, become the most engaging person, the most memorable person on that stage. There is a way so that way you can make sure that let's say I'm going to make a panel of 3, you could be the most interesting person on that stage pretty easily if you just put a little bit of practice into it. And that's that other thing, is a little bit of practice. I think I've said the word a couple times today. All of the stuff we do is practice. Even Carl, I'll say, you and your podcast, this is you practicing your speaking as well. Like
100%.
just like me, this is me practicing too, So just get comfortable with speaking your message and practicing. It'll make everything a lot easier for everybody.
I love what you said earlier, and this reminds me of a quote that I probably say every day to somebody as I'm mentoring or helping somebody or talking. But the biggest difference between the beginner and the master is that the master has failed more times than the beginner has even tried, right? And that's what it boils down to. You just know how to navigate the missteps, right? Like nothing, you don't crash and burn because you've been here a billion times before, and you just keep moving. You know how to do the dance. Like, yeah.
That's exactly it. Yeah. It's, some people they'll be at an event. Let's just even call it a small event. Maybe it's at like a pub and you're standing up, you're just doing a quick speech. And some people might get tripped up if someone drops a beer bottle and they're like, what's happening? It's like, or you can recognize that, yeah, other stuff's happening in the room. If you can play with that and improvise with that kind of stuff, that's kind of like, that's that stuff that makes everything a little bit more flowy, and like everyone goes, this guy's in control. I like that. But like, you don't get tripped up by noises and things that are happening around you. It's like, just own your space and just plant your feet and get it done.
I love it. And that improv reminds me of something else you put on the sheet here. You'll love to have just a quick high level about this Derek comedy club. Tell me about this. But what do you say?
I'll say
laugh. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's true. Years ago, and when I first started doing more and more stage work, I found a group of friends that were all incredible artists in their own right, whether it was poets, storytellers, comedians, wide variety of different types of performers. And so we would perform open mics every Friday night. And I was doing these for a couple years, and I'd go every single Friday night. Of course, I'd go up, I'd kill. Sure enough. But then I would watch other people come up, specifically the comedians, and the comedians would come up and they were working through stuff. And, some of them were better than others, as you can appreciate. And I realized that there was some value in maybe just like helping them. And I'm not implying that I'm the funniest guy in the world or I'm even a comedian. I'm not. But I am capable of brainstorming and helping people. So I started inviting the comedians over to my house, which is what we called the Comedy Lab. So on Tuesday nights, they'd come over, we'd work on jokes, we kind of practice them out. And then on Friday, they'd go up, they'd perform them. Maybe they'd succeed, maybe they'd fail. They'd come back on Tuesday, we'd brainstorm some new ones. And within no time, I was just able to witness these people develop because they just needed a little bit more brainstorming outside of their own heads, work with some other people to kind of see what works or what makes people laugh, and then go up and perform it. And the reason that this question was even asked is that Comedy Lab ultimately became what I do now for a living, which is public speaking and helping people do that. Because even in my world, there's the open mic practice and there's the brainstorm sessions. So I still live this philosophy in my day-to-day professional career, is that I help people with their material by brainstorming and then practicing. Yeah. And it works like a charm. It's really helpful to just not have to feel as though you're doing this all on your own while you're going, I hope this works, and then finding out that it doesn't while you're on stage.
Yeah. And comedy is such a great tool in any aspect of communication to help kind of connect people through shared human experiences that are either funny or miserable or whatever it is, but you make light of it, and then all of a sudden it's very engaging. And I think infusing that into public speaking is always helpful. Like,
that's it. And then don't ever feel the need to be funny if you're not. If you're not funny, please don't try. We don't need it. But if you can use humor, it does cut tension in public speaking very much. Just even to get sick. I saw a guy just come up. It was 3 weeks ago here on a stage. I'd never seen it, and it seems very simple, and I wish I had thought of it myself. But he was, it was one of these situations where everybody was given a microphone. They didn't know they were coming up on stage. So it was just like, all right, give it up for this guy. And he came up. He didn't know he was about to speak, and he got the microphone. He stood up, and the first things that came out of his mouth, he goes, "Oh, thank God, you're all naked." And then he began to speak. So he just said, like, that old thing, like, just picture your audience being naked. He's like, "Oh, thank God, you're all naked." I thought that was great. It's like, great. He cut the tension, really well.
Nailed it. That's beautiful. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, look, man, we've covered some really good stuff here. I feel like we've got a lot of value for the audience, and we are coming up on time. But before we wrap, I'd like to ask you one last question. Is there anyone or anything in your career that you'd like to shout out to the audience? Maybe a mentor, a valuable resource, or a favorite client?
Oof, great question. Well, mentor. Actually, I find that mentorship super valuable, especially as somebody who's a coach. I recognize that we can't do any of this stuff on our own. One of my mentors was early in the career. He's still a mentor today. So we're talking almost 2 decades. It was a website that he had created. It was a website designed to get kids outdoors and active. And this was before YouTube. So we were creating videos and getting these videos up on the internet, and people didn't know how to do that, and then get the kids outdoors to do the stuff. And so we had a professional who came up. He would be the talent that would be on the camera. And that one day, the talent didn't show up. And this is when my mentor said, "Hey, Derek, maybe you could give this a try." And I said, "Oof." And I have contrary to what you might see here, Carl, I had no interest in being the face of anything. I just didn't want to do it. But I said, okay, fine, because he believed in me. And when he did that, I stood in front of the camera, and I know you heard me say this earlier, but I nailed it. And when I nailed it, it just became very obvious to me that it's like, oh, I have this inside me. It's like, this is very natural to me. And so I just want to shout out my mentor who actually saw something in me and was like, you give it a try. And I just want to say, like, for anyone who's a little bit older who sees a younger person, don't underestimate the value of just giving them a quick little nudge and saying, give it a try, because it completely conceptualized my entire career, making me realize that, oh, wait, I can be a spokesperson. And when I did that, as you can imagine, the rest of the career kind of fell into place. So just wanted to shout him out. He's amazing.
I love that. All right. Well, I want to give a big thank you as well to Fadi Bolos, who was our guest on episode 60, who connected us with Derek. Thanks, Fadi. And so, yeah, that's it. We've been talking with Derek Smith, who's a public speaking coach, event host, and master of ceremonies. You can check out his website at Mr. Derek Smith. That's MrDereksmith.com. But if listeners want to follow up with you directly, where should they go?
Well, actually, you said it. MrDereksmith.com. It's the best place for you to find all of my materials. And also, when you go on there, don't underestimate by booking a 15-minute call with me. I'd be more than happy to offer any of your listeners a copy of my video coaching course. It's a very simple course to just get you moving on some of these things we talked about today: your message, your persona, and your ability to engage with audiences. The course is very simple. Book a call with me. I'd love to meet you and then give you that course.
Love it. Love it. All right, Derek. Well, thank you so much. And until next time, friends, we'll see you soon.
Thanks so much, Carl.
We really hope you enjoyed the show. Please like and subscribe to join us on our next journey through the world of art and business on the Pixel Retentive podcast.